Very good evening to all of you. On behalf of Auditing and Assurance Standards Board of Institute of Chartered Accountant of India, I welcome you all in today's program organized by WSP of ICI. As we all are aware that today's topic is very important, that is the BRSR. So in order to tackle this important webinar, Audit and Assurance Roadmap on BRSR, we are having with us two eminent speakers, CA Sarika Gosenji and CA Amit Jainji. So on behalf of WSP of ICI, I extend my warm welcome to both the learned speaker, CA Sarika ji and CA Amit Jainji. Welcome to you, ma'am. Welcome to you, sir. We are also having with us Madam Priyamvada Mukherjee ji as a moderator for today's webinar. I also extend our welcome to Madam Priyamvada Mukherjee ji to moderate this today's webinar. So in order to start the proceedings of the webinar, I request Priyamvada Madam to please take the further proceedings of the webinar. Over to you, Priyamvada Madam, please.
Thank you, sir. I would want to welcome everybody to today's webinar on the topic Audit and Assurance Roadmap on BRSR, Navigating Risk and Compliances. My name is Priyamvada. I'm a Chartered Accountant and a BCom Honours graduate from Sri Venkateshwara College. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to ICAI and AASP for giving me this opportunity again to be a moderator for this session. I'm very excited to be a part of this insightful session today. I would want to start with giving a brief introduction about the topic, and then I would introduce our learned speakers for the day. So, as we continue to witness growing global emphasis on sustainability and corporate governance, businesses have been called to account not just for financial performance, but also for their social, environmental, and governance impacts. This has led to creation of frameworks that provide companies with a structured manner to disclose their performance in these areas. One such framework is the BRSR framework, which is Business Responsibility and Sustainability Report. This framework was introduced by Security and Exchange Board of India to guide and standardize sustainability disclosure amongst companies. Previously, companies were required to disclose their sustainability-related information through the BRR framework. However, it was not sufficient, and SEBI realized that there was a need for a more structured and comprehensive reporting manner. So BRSR came into the picture, and it is currently mandatory for top 1,000 listed companies by market capitalization in India from the year 2023 onwards. BRSR offers numerous benefits to both companies and stakeholders. It promotes transparency, accountability, and promotes sustainable business practices. Now, I would like to introduce our speakers for the day. Our first speaker is CA Sarika Gasain, ma'am. She's a CA and a CS and also holds a diploma in IFRS from ACCA UK and in BRSR from ICAI. She has around 22 years of post-qualification experience. Currently, she's handling the firm's ESG and sustainability practice and also leads the technical function at Mazars in India. Her past experience includes servicing large clients in the areas of audit, accounting, and advisory. On the professional front, she has co-authored 2 books and also speaks on multiple forums. So welcome, Sarika ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before proceeding, I would also like to introduce another speaker, CA Amit Jain sir. Amit Jain sir is a partner in accounting advisory practice of Deloitte India. He's a graduate and a chartered accountant by profession. He's having around 17 years of Big Four experience in auditing, accounting, and reporting matters. He is leading accounting and reporting, IPO, and transaction market and ESG. Apart from that, he's the faculty member in the AS committee, in the FRRB committee. He has assisted ICAI in development of educational material on consolidation related standards. He has participated in webinars, seminars, and has been delivering sessions on various complex topics in ICAI for the last 10 years. Some of his expertise lies in the areas of IPO readiness, capital market assistance, IPO end-to-end support, Ind AS, IFRS, US GAAP, ICFR readiness, risk and control matrices preparation, SOP and process narrative preparations, BRSR advisory and assurance, remediation of financial statements, and audit readiness services. So I would really extend a warm welcome to both our speakers. And without any further ado, I would request Sarika ma'am to share her wonderful insights on this very valuable topic today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your kind words and introduction and to set the foundation of BRSR that leaves me a little bit for setting that background. Initially, thank you so much. And I'd like to again extend my thanks to ICI and AASP for inviting me over, maybe on a very different topic, rather a combination of my expertise, which is accounting, auditing, plus the ESG and sustainability aspect, which is now more near to my heart. I keep saying it. I've got two babies now. One is 22 years old and one is 3 years old. So since a smaller baby takes more attention, more care, and it needs to be nurtured in the right direction. Therefore, ESG and sustainability is taking a lot of efforts, energy, and not only me, most of the chartered accountants are coming into this domain, which is the need of an hour. Because while we talk about preparation of the BRSR, it is still itself a very critical thing, because it is a conglomerate of so many regulation. It not only incorporates the Companies Act requirements, SEBI, LODR, labor laws, etc., etc. So this is not very simple, though the final BRSR looks simple. If we look at any BRSR, we will keep scratching our head if I ask you to look at the company's BRSR, and if I ask you whether you would like to invest in that company. Unlike a financial report, when I give you a balance sheet and a profit and loss account, within 5 minutes, if I allow you to choose, looking at the notes to the accounts, the going concern viability of the company, the report what the assurance provider has given, the EBITDA, the profit and loss, etc., etc. Within 5 minutes, you will tell me whether it's a worth investing company or not. On the contrary, BRSR is an upcoming thing. To understand that itself is very difficult, and to understand the assurance report thereof is again very, very difficult, because there are multiple assurance frameworks. SEBI hasn't mandated, unlike MCA, that the ICI assurance standard needs to be used. Therefore, the complexity starts. However, there are very few practically used assurance standard. We will discuss about those as well. But still, since a liberty has been given, and more so because the company still has a choice to go for which kind of auditors they want to choose for. So even a chartered accountant, chartered engineers, company secretaries, lawyers, etc., can audit, but they are not able to bring that quality on the table, because while ESG people would know what to audit, only the chartered accountant, as per my understanding, sorry to say, but would know how to audit. So the audit methodologies, the audit principles, what we have been reading, understanding, even drinking since beginning, where ever since we started doing a chartered accountancy, is something which is a core domain of chartered accountants. Therefore, I feel myself blessed that, having a financial audit background for so many years, I'm able to pour that knowledge and convert and giving that different shade to the ESG audit. And that's where I'm here today, to share my experience so that my colleagues can also benefit out of it. So again, I would request, or I would take permission from sir to share my screen and let me know if that is
Please.
visible. Allow me to make it a full screen. Is it visible in full
Yes,
screen
madam.
mode?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, madam.
Okay. So today
Hmm.
we would be
Hmm.
deliberating the. So there is a background noise. Can you please
Is it?
see if that can be managed? Yeah, it's perfect now. So as I just deliberated, today's session is on audit and assurance roadmap, is specifically related to as to how we have to go about looking at any particular BRSR of a company when we are appointed as the assurance agency for that company, and how to navigate the risk and compliances around BRSR. So as I started saying that it is a mix of a lot of compliances. So going forward, I keep telling my clients as well, it is nothing but a sort of Aadhaar card where all your information get punched and get linked to different platforms. And therefore, whatever information any company has submitted to any other portal or any other regulators, for example, Factories Act, that has to be correct and should be matching what we have submitted separately. So it will, going forward, be looked at a report card of the company, and just like the financial statements and audited financial statements rather, of the company, this will be a key report, and the eyes will be on the assurance providers, how they have conducted the audit, what is the audit methodology, whether all the parameters or all the methodologies what we are using for financial audit are being applied here as well. And most importantly, since it's a very different sort of a report, the major problem what I encounter, or rather I have discussed with a couple of other chartered accountants who are doing the assurance of BRSR, is how to determine the materiality. Because unlike financial audit, when my revenue, EBITDA, profit after tax, etc., forms a common base to calculate materiality, here, since the indicators what are reported in BRSR are heterogeneous, so we cannot have one common substratum or base for any company or any auditor rather to decide the materiality for assurance perspective. So we'll decode everything, don't worry. So in today's session, we will be talking about a bit of introduction before we move to BRSR or assurance thereof. Then we will be understanding basic requirements as to what BRSR is. Because unless you do not understand the financial statements, what is balance sheet, what is P&L, what is notes, what is my SOCI, etc., you would not be able to assure it to the extent it is required to. Then we will also understand quickly some other frameworks which are applicable in India or across the globe. That is the reason we will not go into detail, but most of the big sized company get an assurance of BRSR together with other reportable frameworks. For a very simple reason, mostly those frameworks are assured in one single assurance standard. Therefore, the parity between the two framework, when there are common indicators or common information, has to be there. So we cannot ignore that fact. Therefore, we will quickly understand how to link those. Then we will also understand the very important aspect, which is value chain partners and how it is being reported. And there is a change in financial year 24-25. So from the audit perspective, what has changed and what is our increased responsibility, we will understand that as well. There are multiple frameworks which are available, as I started saying in the beginning, with respect to BRSR. Nationally and internationally, we will touch base those. We will also understand the acceptable assurance standard out of what I said on number 5. We will understand and how we should be guided around that. We will very quickly understand. We will also touch base on a very crucial aspect, which is linkage between financial, that means my balance sheet, P&L, etc., and my non-financial, which is BRSR. And last but not the least, connectivity of various functions within the organization and what I should keep in my mind being an assurance provider when I'm going, how to get data, what connectivity we have to see. Since we have been accustomed to do financial audit, so we know if I have to do payroll, what all departments are coming into picture, how the transactions are following, what is the cash flow, what are the areas which I have to check. But since BRSR is very new reporting and assurance again is very much new or newer as against even the preparation, then that connectivity needs to be understood well before we go on the field. Let's get started with understanding a very basic thing, what is ESG. So first of all, let's understand one very basic concept, which is sustainability. So, sustainability, as the name suggests, means sustaining ourselves somewhere. So, this concept got emerged way back in 1987 after the name of a doctor, that she was a PhD doctor, and that report was called as Brundtland Report. So, based on her name, the Brundtland Report was issued, and the sustainability's definition was given for the very first time, saying that we should restrict ourselves to the share which has been given to us by the environment, and we should not eat the share of others. But in normal parlance, what does sustainability means? I am sustainable if I am able to engage you for next 10 hours time. I am sustainable at workplace if I am able to generate revenue for my company. I'm able to satisfy my clients. I'm able I'm able to work together cohesively with my team members. So definition of sustainability for one person at different places in different situations keeps on changing. And since it's the broadest subject across the globe on the earth, therefore, to understand that curriculum, we have to divide that into three chapters, or rather three subjects. So to understand sustainability, we have three chapters or three subjects rather, ESG. Any company, whatever it does, will be confined to these three subjects: environment, social, and governance. Please do not mistake social with CSR. Social means the human element, whatever form it is, which is attached to the company. For example, the company is dealing with its suppliers, dealing with employees, dealing with community around, dealing with the service providers. Wherever the human element comes, that is covered in social part. Anything which is attached to air, water, and earth gets covered under environmental part. Anything which relates to compliance is or submitting anything to regulators or even internal MISs. Anything which talks about making some reports, filing thereof, is covered in governance. So just think of any sort of company, be it service or manufacturing or any sector, every activity of the company will get confined to these three elements. And these are the three pillars of sustainability: the reporting of sustainability, the reporting of ESG, and reporting of non-financial reporting is synonymously used. So ESG reporting, sustainability reporting, or non-financial reporting are synonymously used. And everything in BRSR also revolves around ESG. There are 9 principles which we use called NGRBC principles, which are issued by MCA, are also bucketized in 3 segments. How we will see. So far, the World Economic Forum Global Risk Report tells that ESG is a very risky proposition if it is not taken care of. And this is, I am not saying this is the World Economic Forum, where ESG has been identified amongst other risks as short term or long term. Therefore, while any company is strategizing their functions, operations, any business strategy, expansion, etc., they have to factor all the risk within ESG as short term or long term. Similarly, for us as an assurance provider as well, we have to consider ESG as a riskier proposition. We cannot keep it at low risk since it is embedded in the substratum of the company. Therefore, accordingly, my audit strategy has to be aligned as per the risk what has been considered by the companies as short term or long term. We are open to challenge those risks. We might see more risk than perceived by the company, but at least whatever risky preposition has been seen and considered by the company, we cannot ignore that. Alongside with financial reporting, non-financial reporting, that means ESG reporting or my BRSR reporting, which is one of the examples of sustainability reporting, has been started to seen to understand the ESG maturity of an organization, how much the company is resilient about the ESG and its risk, how the company is goal oriented or outcome oriented in terms of ESG objectives, what are the key focus areas of a company around ESG investment, how the company is evaluating the risk, and what are the benchmarks for the company as compared to itself or its peers. So, as I said, that while the financial statements are also looked at to understand the financial viability of the company, ESG and any report around it are equally important, and over the period will gain more momentum to take more importance as against the financial reporting. And you will see in time to come that once the BRSR report or any quarterly sustainability report, that is not the practice so far, is in the market, it will equally have an impact on the financial viability or the share price of the company. And this reporting is gaining momentum. And therefore, whoever is the assurance agency for that, the equal responsibility rests on them to verify the data of BRSR or any other sustainability report, what they are doing. Now, understanding BRSR, as it was initially discussed, this is a reporting which is started way back in 21-22, but 21-22 was given as a voluntary year for compliance. Then 23-20, 22-23 was the first year. So 2 years as a mandatory compliance the companies have started doing. Apart from positive KPIs and opportunity, it also states risk, implication, and roadmap. That's the beauty of this form. So positive, negative, all balance needs to be given in this report. This is a dynamic form. 23-24, after the first year of compliance, it significantly got changed. Three very important aspects, BRSR core, ESG rating, and ESG investing, were introduced. BRSR core was part of the BRSR itself. We will quickly discuss about it. ESG rating and ESG investing is not part of BRSR, but these three concepts were introduced by SEBI last year. For 24-25, which is a running year, there is a significant change around the value chain, and we will discuss that as well. So, as I started with saying, and I said in the beginning, it is going to become the report card of the company for its business expansion, continuity, and the ultimate objective for any company to get ESG rating. As if we have credit rating, we have ESG rating as well. SEBI has introduced a concept of ESG rating, saying that any listed company who wants to get their company ESG rated has to go through the SEBI's norms of providing the ESG rating. So what SEBI has suggested, the rating providers have to accredit themselves with SEBI. And just like we have a data bank of the independent directors on the MCA website, they will have a list of those accredited rating providers, and companies can choose out of those and can get the rating. But the methodology, the rating pattern, etc., will be the same, which will give or bring more uniformity in the credit rating, plus will have more credibility of that rating. Now, understanding the structure of BRSR, BRSR is a report, has been divided in three parts. Section A, which talks about general disclosures of the company. It's a prerogative of the legal team, the company, its number, who can be contacted, its place where they are functioning, they have the subsidiaries, what is the structure of the company, etc. B is the management process and disclosure, which largely talks about the company's policies, procedures, forms, etc. And C is nothing but a corroborating aspect of B. Whatever company is stating in section B is being, somehow corroborated or documented. For example, the company is saying we have a diversity policy. So there will be questions around diversity policy in section B. Section B talks about human rights. So section C will have indicators to answer around human rights, etc., etc. C is the lengthiest section of the entire form and runs in 2 pages and has been divided further in 2 parts. One is the essential indicator and the second one is leadership indicator. Essential indicator, as the name suggests, is compulsory in nature, but the leadership indicator is voluntary in nature. Again, the beauty of this form is you as in the company may choose to give some of the leadership indicator and they may leave others. It is not the case that if you choose a policy to provide information around leadership indicator, you have to opt for all. No. If a company sees any risk, if a company does not have the adequate information, there is a practical difficulty, or for one reason or the other, company does not want to provide some of the information which is poured in leadership indicator, they may skip that information. However, the quality of the BRSR form is assessed more based on the leadership indicator. More the leadership indicator, the gravity of the BRSR is considered to be more. However, it doesn't mean that you write something or the other just for the sake of writing. It has to be meaningful, it has to be equally supported by the data what you are producing. So BRSR core, as I mentioned, was an addition to BRSR as a concept last year. There is a myth that it is a separate subset of BRSR, which is not the case. BRSR core are 9 key KPIs, which are out of the entire BRSR. So just understand the process. So we have BRSR. It is based on 9 NGRBC principles, which are issued by MCA. So do not get confused with 9 number. 9 is also used for the NGRBC principle, which is a substratum of preparation of the entire BRSR. And 9 also is the number for BRSR core. So the entire BRSR has to be prepared using 9 KPIs, or sorry, 9 principles of NGRBC. And then once that report is prepared, there are multiple indicators with specific names. These are scattered throughout the report. It is not given at one place. For example, the water discharge and water related information is given somewhere at one place and other place also. So these are not clubbed. GHG related information also is given at one place or other place as well. So once that entire report is combined, there are multiple factors which I'm just going to display. Water footprint, enabling inclusive development. It means that if I am growing, my people around should also grow. Gender diversity, needless to say, employee well-being and safety. Openness of business, GHG footprint is nothing but carbon footprint. Energy footprint. So GHG footprint and energy footprint are interrelated because a part of GHG footprint is also coming from energy footprint. Waste management. So these are all very much clear. Last but not the least is the ninth indicator, which talks about fair engagement with supplier and customer. This is the one where we as chartered accountants come into picture when it comes to verification. But SEBI has made our life easy. So SEBI has issued some guidelines for assurance aspect around this. We will just discuss after a few slides, where they have given us a liberty, or rather you can say a mandate, that the information regarding this, which is given as an indicator in the BRSR, can be picked and has to be picked from the audited financial statements. So if the time allows, we will see how BRSR looked like. So there are certain information like what is the time period within which the credits are paid to the creditors are to be paid by the company. That information and the ratio around it is also equally given in my financial statements. Advances related to related party transactions, etc., etc. There are certain indicators which are drawn from there and has to be picked from those audited financial statements. So the question might come that what if my BRSR is being closed prior to my audited financial statements? That will not be a case, because as per SEBI, the BRSR has to form part of the annual report. So the annual report has to be closed with both together, my BRSR as well as my financial statements. So need not to worry, we will get that audited information. So these are 9 indicators which are called as BRSR core. So the question comes, what is the need of giving these 9 indicators separately termed as BRSR core, and how we as auditors bothered about it? So as I said, that if you look at financial statements, balance sheet, profit and loss account, these are designated. This is my balance sheet as at year-end position. This is my profit and loss account for the year. This is my SOCI, which talks about the movement of the reserves. These are notes which talks about the explanation about balance sheet, profit and loss account, etc., etc. There is no such bifurcation of certain items, and SEBI is in the process of revising BRSR, not because of this, but it is a dynamic form. So might be in the time to come, these information are segregated as per this water footprint, waste management. But till the time it is not, it is very difficult for the companies. Listen to me carefully. It was being very difficult for the companies to compare themselves as compared to the previous year, or compare themselves with other peers in the same or different industry. So these are 9 very specific KPIs or comparability parameters which can be used to compare one company by itself or with others. So these are common factors. For example, if I am running a company and another company is also been running in the same industry, my water footprints are more and their water footprints are less. That means there is a scope of improvement in my company. Similarly for waste management, similarly for energy footprint and GHG footprint. But on the right side, inclusive development, gender diversity, employee well-being, openness of business will give you a better picture if you are doing better in terms of number. For example, I have more females in my company than male. I will be rated better than the other company. So these are the indicators which can be used and has to be used for the comparability purpose. While it comes to assurance, then again, since these will be used by external stakeholders, regulators, by companies, while the entire BRSR has a meaning to it and is very, very important when we have to, look at every other information with the same gravity, but the gravity of these 9 items is more. Understand that why? SEBI has mandated that BRSR core will be subject to reasonable assurance. And trust me, this is something very, very difficult. I would not say is, but was, because 1 year has gone. So there was a lot of hues and cries that across the globe, if we look at, very, very difficult or rare to find that in any of the countries, reasonable assurance of sustainability report was mandated. There may be very rare circumstances, at least not known to me, but India was a standard setter wherein the reasonable assurance was set, but the reasonable assurance was not mandated for the entire BRSR, but for these 9 KPIs, which are very, very important. Therefore, for auditors also, the 9 KPIs, what you can see on your screen become very, very important, because the gravity of the reasonable assurance, the credibility of reasonable assurance, the way the stakeholder look at the reasonable assurance from is very, very different than limited assurance. Now, as I mentioned, the entire BRSR is divided in ESG section, but not as this is the E section, this is the S section, or this is the G section, but in a very different way, language, etc. And you can actually, if you understand ESG, if you understand sustainability, if you understand different parameters of environmental aspect, specifically principle 6 information, then you will get to know. So there are 9 principles, as I mentioned. So how these are clubbed? There are 2 principles in E, there are 3 principles in S, and there are 4 principles in governance. These are very, very simple principles to read, but since the entire BRSR form revolves around these principles, the policies of the companies, the SOPs of the companies, the reporting of the companies, and anything and everything which is being reported in BRSR has to be mapped and reported in the language of these 9 principles. What are these 9 principles? As I mentioned, so these are very simple principles. For example, let's read 1 or 2. Principle 3 in social, business should respect and promote well-being of the company, of the company's employees, including those in their value chain. So as I said, social is not limited to CSR, but also includes anything or anybody who has the human aspect connect with the company. So even the value chains are part of the social, even the employees are also part of the social aspect of BRSR. So there are 2 principles, as I said. So there are questions in the entire BRSR form, specifically in section C. So principle 1, essential indicator, leadership indicator. Principle 2, essential indicator, leadership indicator. So that's how the indicators. So while I'm saying indicator means the questions. So the questions are divided and spread across the BRSR form in the principle wise manner. So as I mentioned, there are 4 principles in governance. So we are just done with what? Let's have a quick recap. I'm not able to remove this slide, but okay. Okay, so before we go to key steps for us as an assurance provider, let's understand what we have done so far. So initially we understood a very basic concept of sustainability. Sustainability is the broadest concept. To understand that sustainability, we divide that curriculum in 3 subjects, E, S, and G. Everything and anything what company does is covered in either of the bucket and has to be confined into ESG. The entire BRSR form is divided in ESG, not as E section as section G, but questions are around ESG. And there are 9 principles which form base to prepare BRSR, 9 principles of NGRBCs. And then once that BRSR is prepared, there are 9 KPIs which are called as BRSR core. Why BRSR core is important? Because it is providing us the comparability platform for a company to compare the company by itself or with others. And BRSR core as against non-BRSR core indicator in the same format are subject to reasonable assurance. Rest of the BRSR indicator, SEBI has not mandated to get audited, but I just tell you why and how the companies are going around. So they are getting BRSR core as reasonably assured and non-BRSR core, that means the rest of the indicators as limitedly assured. So the gravity of the steps or the procedures, and I think this audience will be the most intelligent audience I'm talking to, because it is very difficult for non-chartered accountants to explain what is reasonable assurance, what is limited assurance, and they keep asking the questions: what will be the sample size, why you are choosing additional sample here, one is only failed, why are you increasing your sample size, etc., etc. So here I will not spend more time what is reasonable assurance, what is limited assurance, but we will spend time on sampling your strategy, because unlike financial audit, the way we carry out, the way we do the risk assessment, the way we select the samples and the materiality is very different. So what and how we do? So first of all, while we are either preparing or auditing the BRSR, we have to identify, because as I mentioned, it has everything. It has HR related information, it has health and safety related information, it has energy related information, it has water related information, it has legal information from Companies Act, SEBI, LODR. Multiple stakeholders are involved. So we have to first identify who are the stakeholders, whom we have to get the data from, how to ensure the completeness. So first of all, we'll identify the stakeholders, then we will do the mapping of BRSR, that this information has to come from this, and we segregate the entire form and information. Unlike my financial statements, I cannot link the information the way it has been, but yes, we have to create some spreadsheet to first divide the BRSR into different sections and then collate it back when we are preparing one simple report. Then we have to do a lot of sessions in terms of explaining them our audit methodology, because it is very, very difficult to explain people from energy side, HR side, to explain the audit methodology from the BRSR angle. And that's where the real challenge starts for us, because unlike financial audit where we have been doing it and the companies are subject to audit, now they are well versed what is materiality, what is the base of materiality, etc. They are clueless. And other assurance agencies are also doing it, which are not, who are not chartered accountants. So I don't think, I'm not questioning on the capability, but had you asked me to operate somebody, I would have killed him, because I'm not a doctor. So similarly, what is happening, the auditor strategies, the assertions, etc., these are the technical terms which we use. Those concepts per se are to be applied here as well, but with a different flavor, how we will understand. So we have to customize the formats, checklist, SOPs with relevant guidance issued by SEBI and ICI. I would like to pause here for a minute and tell you, if I have to look for comprehensive guidance around BRSR audit, what all I have to see. So I have to look at the SEBI Annexure 2 of the previous form, which has some details around what is the definition, how we have to fill the form. We have to also look at, which is a very, very comprehensive guidance. Recently, it has been revised by ICI. So look at the ICI guidance note for this year, not the previous year. We also have to look at the SEBI guidance, not SEBI guidance, yes. SEBI guidance around the BRSR core audit. हम लोग अभी बात करेंगे उसके बारे में. I'll show that to you as well. So these are, and of course the BRSR form. So these are the 4 guidance which you have to use for assurance of BRSR. Then we have to identify and see what are the peer group companies, if they have published the report, how the assurance letter has been issued, if any, and let me tell you one thing. for ESG people, emphasis of matter is an alien concept. They don't understand emphasis of matter. They just understand modified opinion, non-modified opinion, non-conformity, or negative report. So these are four terms which comes from the ISO certifications, ISO 064123. That's how they know. They don't know the concept of EOM in this aspect, and no, assurance standard which are issued other than ISA 3000 talks about EOM as well. So we have to make a very good mix of our audit, championship plus what is prevalent in other assurance standards. And it takes a lot to prepare a report. It took me, for a very big group, what we are doing, it took me almost 25 days to prepare the report, looking at the peers report, looking at the industry they were in. They were into different segments. It takes a lot. Because I keep saying, not only for BRSR audit or other financial audit, sometimes I feel we spend more time in groundwork and we take our audit report lightly, which should not be the case. It is a similar case as if we prepared for the examination for the year throughout, and we missed to attempt the question right. So the report has to be seen with the same gravity as if we look at the procedure for the entire year. Then we finalize the BRSR, and then it is subject to audit. So these are the normal procedures or steps in assurance of BRSR standard or any other framework what the company is asking us to do. So quickly, I think the next presenter will also cover that. But here, from the audit perspective only, I would like to tell you what all frameworks are available and how to connect it from the audit perspective. Apart from BRSR, which is a mandate from SEBI, there are multiple frameworks which are available across the globe. So I keep saying one very beautiful line: if a company chooses to or requires to. So what does it mean? Chooses to? That means the company voluntarily adopts any other sustainability framework, or if the company is required to. So required to can be bucketized into areas where there is a global mandate for the company. For example, its parent company is operating in the US, and that parent company is demanding you to prepare a report as per TCFD. So TCFD, I'm sure most of you would know, is no longer applicable, and it is being subsumed in the IFRS standards. IFRS S1, S2 has already been issued. So on the website, the footnote, what you can see is written that they have stopped updating it, and they have requested the IFRS body to take care of it. So there are multiple frameworks. If the company chooses to or requires to prepare any additional report, that has to be matched, and how that matching needs to be done, our next presenter will help us understand that. So whenever we are assuring BRSR and the company is also subject to any other framework reporting, we have to be very, very sure. If we are the assurance provider for both the assurance letters, it's fine. But we have to see the timing is different. Whatever data we assured in the previous one, as a subsequent event, we have to make sure the other sustainability report, what is being issued, should be the same, as in to the extent the data is common. So I was talking to somebody, an assurance provider, who was not a chartered accountant. So he issued some report in May, and the other report, since time was not there, they issued in July. So he did mention that the company's numbers got changed, not to that extent that they had to withdraw the report, but yes, there were some changes. So we have to consider that as event occurring after balance sheet date, and does that demand for me to revise or withdraw the previous report? So we have to be very, very open in terms of looking at every aspect. This is a very beautiful chart which I prepared. So you can see a company, these are all publicly available information. So you can see listed company's name and the year, which is 23-24. They are preparing, most of them, or rather all of them, are preparing BRSR report, which is a mandate of SEBI. The second and the third framework what they're using is GRI and integrated report. Other frameworks which are being used by them are very, very different. So we can assume, so it's just a one-way traffic, which is sometime creating problem to me because I keep talking to the audience in between, maybe in virtual mode as well, but nevertheless. So that's the mode of doing this presentation. So what do you think can be the reason? So as I mentioned, they may be required to prepare the reports using other framework because there was a mandate either from the parent company or anybody in the value chain, or they might be voluntarily doing it. So as many as 6 are being used. So I was talking to one of a very uh, big sized company's CFO, who is a CFO come ESG head, and she mentioned that, Sarika, at times I tend to think I should spend more time taking initiatives in ESG or preparing the report. एक साल का रिपोर्ट खत्म होता है, दूसरे साल का आ जाता है. And while we are preparing the report, the parity of information, as I mentioned, which is again a caution point for auditors, is to be seen. आपने एक रिपोर्ट में कुछ information दिया है, तो वो दूसरी रिपोर्ट में वो numbers match होने चाहिए, even if आप उसे ऑडिट कर रहे हैं या कोई और उसको ऑडिट कर रहा है. So that was a very, very valid question and well appreciated. So that's the thing. So going forward, regulators are working to consolidate these sustainability frameworks together so that the burden on the company can be reduced. And TCFD is one of the examples when it is being subsumed in IFRS standard. So we are hoping that going forward, there will be a lesser burden on the companies and hence on us. This is a very important concept, value chain partner, because it is entirely spread amongst the entire report and a very, very important and crucial aspect for the companies, and has become a headache for certain companies as well these days with the introduction of the current year's requirement from SEBI. So before we move on to that, let's have a quick recap, whoever joined in between, or if anybody is not into the presentation so far. So just have a quick recap. We understood the concept of sustainability. It is divided in 3 parts: ESG. To report sustainability, we can call it as ESG reporting. We can also call it as non-financial reporting. Somebody was asking why it is financial reporting, why it is non-financial reporting, because this also has numbers. We have emission numbers, we have employees number, head count. So why it is not a financial reporting? So financial reporting generally revolves around profit numbers, my top line, sales, etc. On the contrary, non-financial reporting talks about the units. So for example, my electricity bill, the cost of the electricity consumed sits in my P&L, but the units consumed is part of my BRSR report or other sustainability report. So just to differentiate these two reporting, the initial one is called as financial reporting, the other one is called as non-financial reporting. So we understood sustainability, ESG, and non-financial reporting. Then we also understood, to report sustainability, India has introduced its own sustainability framework, which is BRSR, based on 9 principles of NGRBC. These are divided in 3 parts: E, S, and G, 2 in E, 3 in S, and 4 in G. These are India-specific rules, cannot be used outside, but there is a mapping which is possible. So if I use GRI, if I use NGRBC principles, I can map those. We will discuss in the second segment of our session today. So these are mappable. Once my BRSR is prepared, there are 9 KPIs which are called as BRSR core. Why these are important? Because these are subject to reasonable assurance by SEBI. Rest other is not mandated, but practically companies do get the limited assurance thereof. BRSR core will form substratum for the ESG rating as well, which was the topic or concept introduced last year by SEBI. BRSR sustainability report or ESG rating will be sort of a report card for companies' sustainability, business continuity. If one company has good ESG rating as compared to other, even if the prices are same of that product, what are being offered, the company who has better ESG rating will become the preferred choice of the company, and hence it is becoming very, very important. So if anybody could observe, I think last year, there was a ban on some specific category of gensets, which were required to be modified from 1st October. So these kind of checks and balances are being applied on different companies. So there is a very specific indicator in the BRSR called as water disclosure about water stressed area. So groundwater board issues a list every year where there is a water scarcity. Then you have to make specific disclosures around those areas. So which will be an alarming point for the companies if they are putting the data in that section that the water is being consumed out of the water stress area. So as I mentioned, this will be termed or used as Aadhaar card. So whatever information we are submitting, it has to be true, correct, and should be matching with other data which we have submitted to other regulators. So far we have covered. We also covered that apart from BRSR, which is India specific reporting, there are multiple frameworks which are used. As an assurance provider, we have to make sure the data which is common or related rather or linked rather should be aligned in different reports. Now we land to a very important concept of value chain partner. We call it as value chain, we call it as supply chain. So value chain are the upstream and downstream value chain partners, for example, suppliers, customers, manufacturers, any service provider, logistic partners, etc., are value chain. So just listen to me carefully. If I keep my company in middle, anybody who sells the goods to the company or provides the services to the company, that are, yeah, those are upstream value chain partners. And if I am keeping the company in the middle, any companies or parties to whom the company is selling the goods to or providing the services to are my downstream value chain partners. So anybody who has worked on life cycle assessment, or CBAM is a new requirement where we are working a lot for a client meeting the CBAM requirement, which is European Union, requirement. If I am importing my goods to them, I have to calculate the product carbon, and going forward, there will be financial implications as well. So these concepts, or even scope 3 calculation of my carbon footprints, requires to understand the entire value chain of the company. That means who all are involved in collectively creating the footprints, right? So value chain partners are upstream and downstream. Why these are important? My BRSR requires some information. We will talk about those information. For example, depositing of statutory dues, environmental law compliances, health and safety related compliances, audit, etc., what you can see on the screen. SEBI, through some indicators, some of them are voluntary, some of them are compulsory, ask that whether the company has ensured those compliances with respect to their value chain partner. For example, if I take the first instance, there is a specific question which throws the responsibility on the listed company, whether the company has ensured that their value chain have deducted statutory dues or not. The question comes, or many questions come, that how to ensure. So there are ways and means where we work for our clients, where we provide value chain assistance to the companies, where they train them to understand the data, provide them the data, specific checklists are there, compliances are there. They collect the data, verify, and put it as part of their BRSR. We can control what is in our hand, but controlling somebody else's data, get comfort on them, and giving it as a part of our report is very, very difficult. It takes a lot. So this is therefore the value chain and its compliances have become very, very important, crucial. So I was talking to somebody in one of the companies, for example, I would not name the company, but we can take a normal example of that company, similar in that company. For example, Mother Dairy. Mother Dairy deals with a lot of value chain partners which are very small. They are very simple milkmen. So explaining them about ESG compliances, BRSR strategies, वो बोलेगा सर हम business करें नहीं करें ये data तो नहीं दे सकते. Therefore, this compliance is a headache for companies nowadays. But yes, since it has been mandated, we have to respect that. So in few years to come, the systems will develop and mature to the extent required by SEBI. Now, we have been talking about assurance aspect, but getting into more gravity, wherein we talk about specific standards, and we also talk about what to be followed, how to be followed, etc., etc. So looking at the guidance, let's understand how and where any particular company will come into picture of audit. So if you are uh, engaged anywhere else, just bring your energies back. This is a very crucial page to understand. So out of those 1,000 companies, top 150 companies were under the mandate of assurance. So most of the companies which were out of 1,000 companies, 150 companies were subjected to audit last year. Then this year, top 50, 250 company cumulatively, then 500. And 26-27 will be the year when all the top 1,000 listed companies will be under the mandatory regime of reasonable assurance of BRSR core. I would like to reiterate, BRSR core is subject to reasonable assurance. Rest of the form is not subject to any assurance, but the companies are getting the limited assurance to complete the form. So therefore, the role of auditor becomes very, very important, because gradually all these companies will come into picture. Right side of the slide is even more critical, where value chain partners are also suggested, or rather mandated, as per the last SEBI's recommendation, or rather mandate, that from 24-25, as if we used to have a provision of section 135 comply or explain basis earlier, we have comply or explain basis compliances for value chain in the year 24-25, which is going on. Assurance is not mandatory or not even recommendatory. 25-26, the company will also have an opportunity to comply and explain if they are not following that. But assurance will again come into picture. But trust me, companies have already started reaching out to us to provide value chain assurance, so that there is a readiness till the time it is actually mandatory. So this audit and the value chain, what I just spoke about, are two different things. Trust me, people are confused. So the value chain disclosures, which I just spoke about as part of the BRSR, were existed in the year 23-24 and 24-25. This is a new requirement. What is the SEBI mandate? SEBI is demanding to calculate or to find out the BRSR core data for value chains also, and give it as an additional disclosure or part of the company's disclosure itself. So value chain related BRSR core. So that means उन BRSR उन वैल्यू चेन को भी वो 9 इंडिकेटर का डेटा निकालना है और आपको देना है और आप उसको बनाएंगे. More critical part here is the demand is to have 75% coverage. So 75% coverage in terms of the value, not the numbers. So जितने रुपए का बिजनेस उनके साथ कर रहे हैं, आप सपोज आपका टोटल परचेजेस 2 करोड़ रुपए है, तो उसका 75% विल बी 150. वो आपको उतने वैल्यू चेन का डेटा आपको कवर करके उसका BRSR 9 कोर का डेटा आपको देना है. 75% is too much, but yes, it is a beginning. Maybe इसीलिए 24-25 and 25-26 are comply and explain basis, so that there is a readiness gradually. Now, we spoke about BRSR core. We also spoke about the mandate around BRSR assurance, core assurance, and limited assurance, etc. Other frameworks also, how it is to be mapped. What are the applicable assurance standard and guidance? Let's understand those. So if I talk about BRSR or BRSR core, there are multiple frameworks. Most of them, mostly applicable are ISA 3000, SSA 3000. You might have not heard Indian Standard 26002, which has been issued by Bureau of Indian Standard. And the second applicable standard is AA 1000 series standard. So the approach of these two standards are very, very different. The methodology, the approach, the audience is different. Most of the cases, the companies go for ISA 3000 or SSA 3000. SEBI does not mandate the use of any assurance standard, but the practice set is such. Generally, if that report is to be globally used, that the company uses SSA 3000. And if it is the audience is only or largely Indian companies, ISA 3000 is used. However, if you look at, there is practically no difference between the two. So we can use any of the two. So rest two are not used much. So largely it is SSA 3000 or ISA 3000, which has been issued by ICAI. Now, if we look at the summary of SSA 3000, it is exactly the same the way we execute our financial audit. We have to do initial walkthroughs, we have to select the samples, we have to review the stakeholder engagement, we have to review the data related to process at sites, we have to interview the sites, we have to review the selected statements and claims which are made in the report, we have to do data walkthrough, and we have to also verify the consistency, and we have to do the interviews at every place and to see if it is corroborating. So outcomes will be management letter or assurance report. That's what the standard says. It is similar to us. Had that been a non-CA audience, I would have spent a lot of time, but I don't find that need here because we are well equipped with these methodologies, because these are aligned with my financial audit. Similarly, if I again talk about work performed by another auditor, we have to evaluate their competence, we have to agree with the nature scope, we have to evaluate the adequacy of experts' work which has been done. We have to also, evaluate whether the competency capability are there. So these are very similar guidance which has been, used for financial audit. Similarly, for internal control testing or internal audit, we have to apply the same principle. In case of components of ESG, again, the similar thing what we do. One point I would like to highlight here, practically how we have experienced. Unlike, please listen to me carefully. Unlike financial audit, if it's a big group, we get the component auditors apart from us, and which is a normal practice. We are consolidating only with parent company audit, and some of the subsidiaries or all of the subsidiaries or some of the components are being audited by other auditors, which is a normal practice. They produce the report, we combine it, we disclaim it, etc., etc. There are multiple permutation and combinations. However, since the assurance is just a new baby, last 2 years it has been implemented. This is the second year which is going on. So the practice of component ESG audit is not that prevalent. So the board of good companies recommend to audit all the components by one auditor, and therefore everything and anything is opened up in and for the principal auditor, and the amount of work is huge and everything goes along. So unlike financial audit, when we have a breathing space, here it is not. So we go with the similar manner as if we go for financial audit for control environment, risk assessment, control activities, information communication, monitoring activities. This is a extract from the standard itself, so nothing new. We know that. Similarly, while we complete the assignment, we have to get the written representation. We have to also take care of the subsequent event. I have already spoken about it. We also we have to also read the other information. So this sustainability report is a compilation from so many places. So since the BRSR, I'm talking about BRSR and others also, at times they make it a part of annual report. If that is part of the annual report, so as if we apply the other information paragraph for others, wherein we check if the information is common, these are aligned or not, we do apply that principle here as well. So we have to keep our eyes and all senses open. If I am producing something, for example, I'm giving my GHG emission in my BRSR report, and those GHG emission are produced in GRI report, are those matching? Is there any delta? Is there any difference in the period when we are reporting? If the company is making a statement in the board of directors statement in the beginning, is it something that is matching or not? We have to be very, very careful. So this is a very important segment. I would not spend much time because it is too technical for chartered accountants to start with. When I started my journey as a chartered accountant, not as a chartered accountant, but as a BRSR professional 3 years back, for me, it was all a black number or a black text. It took me a lot. I study every day, every single day study something or the other, and जितना पढ़ती हूँ उससे अगले दिन कुछ और नया आ जाता है. So for last 2 days I have been catching up with certain things which were issued this week, but बहुत सारा है, बहुत सारा. So we have to study a lot. So I'll just tell you what it is and how it is to be used. With respect to BRSR core, SEBI has issued very specific guidance indicator by indicator. So हमारे पास 9 BRSR core indicator थे, as you had seen. So this is the first indicator. So वो numbering ऐसा नहीं है कि ऊपर नीचे नहीं हो सकता. तो 1 का मतलब GHG footprint पहला BRSR core है, ऐसा नहीं है. NGRBC प्रिंसिपल की जो सीक्वेंस है वो डेफिनेटिव है. BRSR कोड में आप ऊपर नीचे कर सकते हैं. सो फॉर एग्जाम्पल GHG फुटप्रिंट किस पैरामीटर में होगा रिपोर्ट, उसका मेजरमेंट यूनिट क्या होगा, और उसको अश्योर करने के लिए जो की आइटम्स हैं वो सेबी ने बताया है. इसमें एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट डिस्क्लोजर आता है वाटर के बारे में. आई जस्ट टेक यू थ्रू. इफ यू कैन रीड द लास्ट लाइन, ये मेरे ऊपर मेरी स्क्रीन पे ब्लैक वो आ रहा है बार, आई एम नॉट एबल टू सी. आई जस्ट टेल यू. So it is talking about water balance. So आपने जितना वाटर विड्रॉ किया है, it should match with your consumption. आप पानी का, जैसे हमारा आइंस्टाइन का फॉर्मूला था इज इक्वल टू MC स्क्वायर, की एनर्जी वेस्ट नहीं होती, ऐसे पानी का भी होगा. अगर आपने पानी विड्रॉ किया है तो या तो आप उसे यूज करेंगे, या वो उड़ जाएगा, या आप उसे फेंक देंगे, या आप उसे संभाल के रख लेंगे. इसके अलावा तो कुछ नहीं हो सकता. सो सेबी इज आस्किंग यू टू मैच, एंड ट्रस्ट मी, आई हैव seen couple of companies reports where this water is not balanced. जितना उन्होंने विड्रॉ किया, सपोज उसका ओपनिंग था, ओपनिंग प्लस परचेजेस माइनस क्लोजिंग शुड बी माय क्लोजिंग, सॉरी माय कंजम्पशन. सो सिमिलरली वाटर शुड बी बैलेंस्ड. सो इस तरह से हर फुटप्रिंट के लिए, हर BRSR कोर के लिए सेबी हैज गिवन सम गाइडेंस which is a bare minimum. So we have to have the understanding of all the energy parameters, what are the units, what are the measurement criteria, what are the terminologies which are used. PPP is a new concept which has been added and people were confused, so as I, and it took a lot to put something in practice. Openness of business was a new concept, trading houses was a new concept. On the contrary, SEBI did not issue any guidance for PPP and trading house. So we had to do a lot of brainstorming and we have to come on a same page as against the client. It took a lot. तो ये सेबी का पूरा गाइडेंस है, जिसमें पैरामीटर आपका क्या है, आपको कैसे उसे मेजर करना है, उसका डेटा एंड एश्योरेंस अप्रोच कैसे आता है. So I'll just take you through something which relates to financial audit. 1 minute. Well-being, diversity. Where is the openness of business? Yes. So यहाँ पे जो ये आप measurement देख रहे हैं, purchases from trading house, etc. SEBI clearly says, I think वो पहली slide पे था, SEBI clearly says that you have to pick this data from the assured data from the financial audit. To that extent, we get the comfort and our job is also reduced. Now, level of assurance, had that been a non-CA, audience, I would have to spend a lot of time. But as we know, limited assurance has more level of gravity. It will bring more confidence. It has, significant matter which has to be informed. It is a positive information or a verdict, and it is a negative. Nothing has come to our attention which causes us to believe, etc. And here the time involved is more, it is less, and we have to do analytics for limited, we have to go for inquiry, etc. So similar principles apply here as well. So for BRSR core, आपको reasonable assurance compulsory लगाना है. नॉन BRSR core आप reasonable भी कर सकते हैं, unlimited भी कर सकते हैं, और कुछ भी नहीं कर सकते हैं. It depends upon the engagement with the client. So this is a very important slide, how I will link my financial with non-financial. So अगर मैं इंडेक्स की बात करूँ तो इंडेक्स में कहीं पे भी नहीं लिखा है कि आपको क्लाइमेट रिलेटेड मैटर्स के बारे में कोई डिस्क्लोज करना है. लेकिन कोई भी अगर आपकी मटेरियल इंफॉर्मेशन है which is impacting the true and fair view on the company and any judgment, then you have to disclose. So indirectly, since climate related matters are impacting my financial statements, the ecosystem of the company, the entire operations of the company, which might affect my going concern viability of the company. For example, if the company is taking or installing any machine which is not cleared by the environmental board, then it might impact my going concern viability because the government may ban the company's operation. So कोई भी चीज आपकी material है as per Ind AS that gives you an open gateway, any material information should not be missed. If anything and everything which relates to ESG, which impacts my operational viability of the company, and it is material to be informed, should be informed, and should not be skipped. That's how my financial non-financial information are connected. So in isolation, I cannot, as I mentioned, electricity का example है, water का example है, employee का example है, या कंपनी की प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी का एग्जांपल है, रिलेटेड पार्टी का एग्जांपल है. सो दीज आर द इंफॉर्मेशन व्हिच आर गिवन इन बोथ फाइनेंशियल एज वेल एज नॉन फाइनेंशियल. Therefore there has to be a common team from the company side also and auditor side also, which has a link, and the data which is collected is to be matching. I had seen initially two companies, not two companies, couple of companies, where there was no sync in the financial and non-financial reporting teams from the company side, and therefore the data which has been published in the market was not matching. But gradually they have done it. So this is a this is a very good example of close sync between two teams, ESG team and non-finance team. There are other areas also, for example, as I mentioned, finance, supply chain, legal, quality team or production team, HR, IT, health and safety, and you can name even more. So while we do ESG reporting or BRSR reporting, etc., we may call it as by any name. These are to be closely knitted by the company, and क्योंकि जो आपका पूरा डेटा आ रहा है BRSR का, वो इन सारी जगह से आ रहा है. So one department can use, for example, energy footprint and GHG footprint. So those two footprints, if these are calculated by same team, it should be, then it's fine. If these are calculated by different set of people, it has to be synced together because these are interrelated. So all these functions, even for internal audit also, so we keep on advising our clients. So we have a couple of clients where we are advising them from the internal audit side also how to embed the ESG requirements into your internal audit function, internal control function, because internal audit comes before any other audit, and that is or even before आपका risk assessment आता है. So the risk team है, so couple of clients we are advising on the risk assessment around ESG and embedding those risk assessment and matrices around those in the entire risk control of the companies. Then internal audit, and then my final ESG audit or BRSR audit. So gradually everything has to absorb the ESG as a concept and has to emerge going forward. That's it from my side. I think I was on time almost 4 minutes before. If any questions we have, we can take it right now, or we can even take later when we are done with both the sessions.
Thank you so much, Sarika ma'am. Whenever you explain a topic, I've attended like a past session also with you where I was the moderator, and I'm glad I got the opportunity
What
again.
was the session?
So,
Which was the session?
it was
ESG?
SA 3400. So initially also when I was like researching on the topic, I had a lot of knowledge about it, but the way you explain everything, it's like so simple and crystal clear, like the components of ESG. Then you took a very simple example, like how to differentiate between financial and non-financial reporting with that electricity bill example, where the units would be considered as non-financial and the electricity bill would be considered as a financial reporting thing. When I was doing my research, I had idea about the NGRBC 9 principles, but I wasn't really aware about the 9 KPIs that forms part of BRSR core. So I mean, really, it it refreshed my concepts, and also got a lot of clarity on reporting, especially because sustainability is such a major issue with climate change and so much happening. Investors are more woke nowadays. They prefer companies which are like sustainable, and they would invest their money in those companies. So I was trying to jot down a few questions. And one of the question was that since ESG is I mean, there are a lot of non-financial aspects. Major part of it is like non-financial in nature. There are things like environmental impact, human rights, and a lot of companies are engaged in greenwashing just to like show a better image. They will provide like false or misleading information. So how can an auditor really ensure that the non-financial disclosures are like reliable as compared to
Yeah.
like the financial ones?
Yeah. So again, even if we go for financial audit, so जो नकली सोना होता है वो ज्यादा चमकता है, right? So
Yeah.
if the company has fabricated any information around any in climate change related aspect, any energy related aspect, that will showcase as if they have done everything right and in the
Hmm.
right spirit. So as if we apply our antenna for my financial audit, we have to keep our eyes open and we have to keep corroborating. Corroborating in ESG is a must, which we have to use. And
Yeah.
before we reach to that level, as I said, before 3 years, I was zero. I'm still on 1% only on ESG, I can say. Because as I mentioned, so you finish something and you get a fresh. And
Right.
ESG is a global thing. So unlike my accounting standard, so when we started studying accounting standard, it was only ICI का accounting standard. Then
Right.
MCA के rules आ गए, वो ही पढ़ना था. उसके बाद जब IFRS आए, तो there was next level of complexity. So we had to study only Ind AS or IFRS rather or AS. So AS are generally not used, right? But
Hmm.
in ESG, unlike financial reporting, there is a lot. For example,
Right.
Amit would be talking about multiple frameworks going forward. So as
Hmm.
I mentioned, there has to be a parity between the two. So जो आपका subject matter है ना, it is so vast. You have to. So I'm a science graduate, right? For
Right.
me, it is an added advantage. So I understand processes, I understand GHG emissions, I understand what is methane, what is biomass, etc., etc. But for a commerce graduate, I'm not saying it is impossible. It will take some time, but we have to study the concept. We can only argue with the client once we are deep inside. So,
Hmm.
my suggestion to all the peer colleagues who are attending the session, if they're very serious going about ESG and sustainability, you can only audit once you know how to prepare. As simple as that.
Right.
I would
Right.
not be able to question the categorization of debtors into good debtors or bad debts unless I know what is bad debt, when it is
Hmm.
to be qualified as bad debt, what are the criterias I have to see to call it as bad debt, right? So
Right.
I
Right.
can only question the client when I know deep inside the matter. So right from today itself, we have to start reading. So again, a balance needs to be made between E, S, and G. A lot of
Hmm.
things go hands on hand. For example, if I talk about E, so around every E aspect, there is a G part also. So if I have to do good practices around E, I have to understand and ensure the compliances around it also. कौन सी filing होती है. So reading is a must. We have to keep reading and we have to keep applying. That's the only thing. And
Right.
जो
Right.
हमारा CA वाला blood है वो use करना है. That's it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. There are certain questions raised by the participants, the viewers also. So one of them being like, what are the benefits arising from BRSR reporting apart from it being like a statutory requirement? Like, why should companies even voluntarily pick them up? And is there any risk associated with not reporting under BRSR? Like, what are the problems that a company can face if they're like not
Yeah.
reporting?
So I'll take the first question. What are the benefits of voluntary reporting and then non-compliance related
Right.
penal provisions? So
Right.
as I mentioned, BRSR or forget about BRSR, any sustainability reporting is gaining momentum, and that will become even more grave if the company is not taking good ESG practices or not reporting.
Hmm.
As I gave an example also, you will become as a company a preferred choice if you are good at ESG parameters also. So
Right.
if supplier A is providing to two customers A, C and D, C and D are equally asking for a same price, but one is better in ESG, so they will prefer the supplier will prefer to deal with a customer having better ESG compliances. So if I know a lot but I don't report it,
Hmm.
right? How the people at large and stakeholders will get to know. So the benefit of voluntary reporting is to showcase, not exaggerate, but
Hmm.
showcase what we are doing. And as
Right.
I mentioned, ESG rating is a symbol of credibility. आप एक AC खरीदते हैं तो सबसे पहले जाके stars देखते हैं. I do not do my
Hmm.
engineering and I do not open the AC and see इसके अंदर क्या copper लगा है या कौन सा wire लगा है. I will go
Exactly.
with the rating. Similarly, the ESG rating, a good BRSR core reporting and progress around it is a symbolic progress of a company, which will definitely bring credibility on that company, even on a voluntary basis. Right?
Right.
That
Right.
was the first answer.
Yeah.
Second is non-compliance. So
Right.
SEBI has so far just mentioned that it has to be made by top 1,000 listed company, but on the contrary, they have not given any penal provision. But
Hmm.
having said that, if company doesn't, it doesn't mean it will not entail any penal provision. It will
Hmm.
go to the generic penalty section as given by SEBI.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Now I'll invite Amit sir. Amit sir, please shed some further light on the topic, and we'll take further questions from Sarika ma'am at the end of the session. Thank you so much, ma'am, again.
Yeah, thank you, Premada. First of all, I would like to say a big thank you to Sarika ma'am because in the very small time, limited time period, she has covered a lot and in a very, very comprehensive manner. So thanks a lot, madam. And I would like to say thank you to ICA and AASB team to give me this opportunity to present my views on the BRSR. Right. So since Sarika ma'am has covered a lot in terms of BRSR reporting, value chain reporting, compliance management as well. Right. So I will be largely focusing on the assurance side on the BRSR reporting. Right. So I would be requiring your permission, Priyamada, to present my screen.
Sure, sir.
Give me a moment.
Yeah.
I hope my screen is visible.
It is visible. It is visible.
Yeah. Hello, friends. So now I will be largely coming and focusing on the BRSR assurance side, right? So SEBI has issued lots of guidance on the BRSR, BRSR core, and the assurance side, and apart from this, ICE has also issued a guidance note, a comprehensive guidance note, I would say, in terms of. I hope my screen is visible.
No, right now we can't see it.
Just give me a moment. I believe there is some problem in presenting through iPad. Let me present my laptop only. Now it's visible?
Yes, we can see it now.
Yeah. Just give me a moment. Let me put this on the PPT mode. Yeah. Right. So I will be covering, my dear friends, in terms of BRSR assurance overview, uh, need for the assurance. Then I will be covering the applicable standard for the sustainability assurance, voluntary and mandatory assurance in the Indian context of the BRSR reporting. I will be covering the types of assurance. As you would be knowing, we have the limited assurance, we have the reasonable assurance. In the previous session, we have heard about Sarika ma'am in terms of reasonable and limited assurance. Then I will cover that what is the detailed difference between the reasonable and limited assurance. And then I will be discussing in terms of different FAQs which has been released by SEBI in terms of the assurance provider, that what activities we can perform, whether the chartered accountant can be a assurance provider, whether whether the internal auditor can be a BRSR assurance provider or not. Then I will be talking about the assurance methodologies, right? So I will be starting from the assurance overview. What is assurance? Let me also present my uh, pointer as well so that we can focus specifically. Okay, so what is assurance? So as I was also telling you that ICA has also issued a guidance note, or I would say a very comprehensive guidance note in terms of all the reportings which we need to give in the BRSR as well as the BRSR code, right? So ICA has said that in that guidance note, what is assurance actually? Right. So assurance, ICA mentioned very clearly, assurance is a process of providing a conclusion, opinion on the reliability of the information disclosed or the context of the information which is presented in the BRSR report based on an independent testing carried out by any third party. Right. So that means we are saying we have to reach, or the assurance provider has to reach to a conclusion. He has to provide a conclusion on the information which has been disclosed in the BRSR report, right? Which is a third party, which is an independent party. If you just link with this guidance of the assurance in terms of BRSR reporting versus the financial audit report, then what we say, the assurance is a process of providing a conclusion on the information or the financial information which has been presented in the financial statement by the independent auditor, right? So this is largely carry forward what we used to do or what we used to provide as an audit report from the financial auditor perspective, right? So in other words, assurance is an evaluation method that uses a specified set of principles, standards to assess the quality of the organization subject matter and the underlying system, process, competencies. In the financial audit, we review the underlying system, we review the processes, we review the competencies of the chartered accountant, we review the competencies and the skill of the people involved in the financial statement audit, right? We review the process flow of the process flow of the information in the organization. Similarly, here from the BRSR reporting perspective or the assurance perspective, we need to understand what system the company is using, what process the company is using, whether the company is using whether the company is using the manual process of maintaining the data, the manual systems, or whether the company has acquired any ERP or any module within the ERP in terms of ensuring the good control within the BRSR reporting perspective, right? So that is what the auditor has to evaluate, and that is what the auditing process is in terms of assurance on in terms of BRSR reporting assurance, right? So what is the key factors which is coming out of this assurance? One is conclusion, opinion, that the auditor has to give its conclusion and opinion on the information which has been disclosed by the management in the BRSR reporting. Context of the information, reliability of information disclosed in the financial statement, whether the auditor is actually reliable or he can express his views in terms of the reliability of the information shared by the management through the BRSR reporting. Independent testing, independent testing is very critical. The person, the assurance provider, the chartered accountant has to be independent before providing any BRSR assurance service to the company, right? Similarly, this is in the same way where the auditor, the statutory auditor of the financial information or the financial statement has to be independent. He cannot provide any management services like bookkeeping, like advising the management on the accounting reporting side, bookkeeping services, or any other services, right? Similarly, the BRSR assurance provider has to be independent. And on this particular aspect, the SEBI has provided certain FAQs, which I will cover later on. Evaluation method. So assurance is an evaluation method. A specified set of principles and the standards, right? So auditor, assurance provider has to follow certain principles, certain standards as set out in the specific auditing standards. Assess the quality of the organization subject matter, assess the system, process, competencies, right? So this is all whole lot of words are coming from the definition of the assurance which has been provided by ICI, which is similar as an statutory auditor we used to follow while doing the audit of the financial state, right? Moving forward, why there is a need for assurance, right? So first of all, why there is a need for doing the audit of the financial statement, right? If I look from the financial statement perspective, who uses the financial statement? Financial statement has been used by the investor. Financial statement has been used by the users of the users of the financial statements, like government, like bankers, like financial institution, like investor, like board, right, on which we rely, because these financial statements have been used by the different users on which lots of lots of decision has been taken by these different users, right? That is why the audit of the financial statement is to be taken care of. Similarly, applying the same guidance, same judgment from the financial audit to BRSR audit, we need the assurance, we need the audit of BRSR as well, right? We need the audit of the financial information, we need the audit of the non-financial information in the format of BRSR, right? So I say clearly said, why we need the assurance on BRSR? Because in order to ensure that the data they reports meet certain standards, there is a credibility of the data presented by the company on which users takes their decision. Assurance helps to enhance the confidence of the stakeholders in the accuracy and the reliability of the reported information and provides the intended user with the useful data for the decision making. That means the different stakeholder who takes the decision on the basis of those information, that information has to be credible, that information has to be reliable. Further, it helps in increased recognition, trust, credibility. Improved stakeholder communication improves accountability, enhance quality of disclosures, accuracy, clarity, completeness, comparability, reliability, materiality. Improve performance of the organization because the management is able to take the good decision making because of those information. Improved internal monitoring, control, and reporting system, right? If some data has to be audited by someone else which is an independent party, it will improve the internal monitoring system of the organization as well, right? So that is why we need the assurance or audit of BRSR reporting, right? Moving forward, what are the critical standards which are available for the sustainability assurance? As we have read in the last session that there are a couple of standard available. So first standard is assurance engagement on the sustainability information, which is standard on sustainability assurance engagements 3000. Standard on assurance engagement SAE 3410. These are the standard which has been issued by ISA in the past, right? Similarly, we have the global standard ISA 3000, ISA 3410, and very recently ISSA 5000 has been released in terms of general requirement for sustainability assurance engagement. If you look at what are the key guidance which is available in all these standards, right? So I've collated a couple of guidance which is common in all these guidances. One is planning, right? While doing the financial audit, we do the planning, we do the scoping of our procedure which we need to perform. Similarly, the planning, we need to do the planning, scoping, nature, timing, and the extent of procedure which we need to perform on the particular engagement. In the financial audit, we identify what is the materiality. Materiality can be dependent on the revenue numbers, can be dependent on net worth numbers, can be dependent on PBT or PAT in the financial audit. Similarly, what is the guidance available in doing the audit of BRSR is the materiality which we need to plan while performing the planning procedures in the BRSR audit procedures. Understanding the entity's internal control environment, assessing the risk of material misstatement, using the work of other practitioner. In the financial audit, there is a standard of auditing where we can use the work of the other practitioner, right? Similarly, we have the concept where we can use the work of other practitioner like GSG emission. We need the environmental specialist. As a chartered accountant, it will be very difficult to reach at a conclusion or to compute the impact of GHG emission. So we will be requiring the experts in that particular field to compute the GHG emission amount or the percentage so that we can rely on that. So how to use the work of the other practitioner, that guidance is given in the auditing standards. Certain representation is required. If you look at financial audit, we as a chartered accountant take the letter of representation, right? We take the letter of representation for the management that these are the parameters on which we have relied on, right? Similarly, we may evaluate to take the written representation from the management as well. Subsequent events. In the financial statement audits, we evaluate the subsequent events. If there is any fire broke out, if there is a significant change in the financial instrument contracts, if there is an acquisition of a subsidiary, if there's a disposition of the financial asset, so we evaluate whether the subsequent event needs to be accounted for as of 31st March of that financial year or not. Right. Similarly, we need to consider the impact of subsequent events as per the guidance given in all these accounting standards, all these auditing standards, sorry. Comparative information. We should evaluate the comparative information as well. Documentation, engagement, quality control review. which is very important in the financial statement audit. For the complex organization, for the complex financial statements, generally we have the concept of the engagement quality control review. That means an independent other partner is required to review the financial statement to form his perspective whether the information has been disclosed correctly or not, right? Similarly, if engagement partner, if the assurance provider is of the view that we should involve EQCR partner, EQCR review, then the guidance is given in the auditing standard. And how to form the assurance conclusion, that also the guidance has been released in these auditing standards. Right, so moving forward, so there are the two concepts as we also read in the previous session. One is mandatory assurance, second one is the voluntary assurance, right? If I recap what we have read in the previous session in terms of the reporting analysis and the assurance analysis, I have divided into three parameters. One is BRSR, second one is BRSR core, and third one is the value chain, right? BRSR reporting has been started voluntarily in the year 2021 and 22, right? So that was the first year of the voluntary reporting. From 2022 and 23, it was a mandatory reporting for the top 1000 listed entity based on their market capitalization. Right, so now in the today's world, we are sitting in November 2024. The BRSR reporting is mandatory for all top 1000 listed entity based on their market capitalization. But what about the assurance? That means what about the audit of that BRSR reporting? So this is not mandatory as of now, this is voluntary as of now. But most of the companies we have seen in the market, they are going for the limited assurance in terms of BRSR. Right, limited assurance means we have captured separate. So we have captured a separate slide in the going forward. So I will cover that as well. But for the purpose of here, limited assurance means that we need to apply certain procedure, analytical procedures, inquiry procedures to provide some sort of support, to provide some sort of reliance that the information is coming correctly. The second concept is the BRSR core, right? So 9 principle we have talked about it. So the reporting of that BRSR core is mandated in the year 2023 and 24 itself. So this guidance has been came up by the SEBI last year ended 31st March 24, and the reporting was mandatory last year, and as well as the assurance of those companies was mandatory starting from the last year. But there is a phased manner in which the auditing or the assurance is mandatory. What is the criteria? The criteria was for the year ended 31st March 24, top 150 listed entities needs to get audited. Right, by 31st March 25, top 250 listed companies needs to get audited. By 26, top 500 companies needs to get audited, and by 2027, all the 1000 companies needs to get audited. So the objective is, for the BRSR core perspective, reasonable assurance is mandatory, and all the 1000 listed entities are supposed to get audited by the year ended 31st March 2027. Right, now coming to value chain analysis. So when I come to value chain analysis, where the upstream and the downstream transaction needs to be reported. So this is a new concept which has come up in the current year, and in the current year it is mandatory for from 2024-25 for the top 250 listed entity on the comply or the explain basis. That means they have to give the information in the BRSR reporting format for the top 2000, for the top 250 listed entities. And what about the assurance? So assurance is not mandatory as of now, right? So we are awaiting for the further SEBI guidance in terms of what is the format of that reporting, and if there is any further guidance SEBI is evaluating in terms of auditing of the value chain partners. But in a nutshell, BRSR audit is voluntary, BRSR core mandatory in a phased manner, value chain is voluntary as of now, right? But it is optional. Okay, moving forward, what are the different types of assurance which are available? One is the reasonable assurance, second one is the limited assurance. As the name of these categories suggest, reasonable assurance means the auditor has to perform significant procedure in order to reach to a conclusion that he can rely on the information shared by the management. What is limited assurance? Limited assurance means, as the name again suggests, that auditor is supposed to perform limiting procedures as compared to the reasonable assurance, right? Let's see what is the difference between these two, reasonable and the limited. So ICE has also issued a a guidance which includes the guidance on the reasonable and the limited assurance. So ICAI clearly says what is the nature of opinion. They say the reasonable assurance, the language when they write in the audit report, that audit report says it should be positive language in its opinion. For example, when the auditor or the assurance provider should mention, he should mention that in our opinion, the subject matter conforms in all material aspects with the identified suitable criteria and so on. Then it is in the positive side, positive language in the opinion. When a limited assurance needs to be given, then the auditor has to use the negative language. What does that mean? Nothing has come to my attention which cause us to believe that subject matter is materially misstated. So this is the way the language has to be drafted while giving the limited assurance. Nature of testing, as I said, in the reasonable assurance we need to perform extensive procedures, and in the limited assurance we need to perform less extensive procedure. Right, let's see what the ICAI has mentioned here. So reasonable assurance engagement requires more detailed understanding of the underlying process and controls. Perform substantive testing, right? That means we need to test the samples as well. We need to define what is the TOD, test of details, right? We need to perform analytical procedure as well. We need to obtain certain, we need to perform certain interrogation within the organization of different personnel who are taking care of those processes. We need to evaluate the systems. We need to evaluate the process, right? We need to gather more evidence from the organization. That is what the reasonable assurance is. As compared to reasonable assurance, the limited assurance is largely based on the inquiry and the analytical procedure. It is less extensive, less time consuming as compared to the reasonable assurance. In terms of materiality, that is not creating a big difference because it has to be computed based on the intended user. But if I need to understand, if I need to compare the reasonable and the limited assurance from the perspective of underlying subject matter and the engagement circumstances, right? So what we need to do, we need to identify and assess the risk of material misstatement. We need to understand the internal control over the preparation of the subject matter of the information. What all information goes in the BRSR reporting, BRSR core, we need to evaluate those information, right, as compared to the limited assurance where where the auditor is just to identify and perform some sort of basic or the inquiry procedures. Risk response, more extensive procedure needs to be performed, right? And in the case of limited assurance, less extensive procedure needs to be performed as compared to the reasonable assurance, right? So this is the broad comparison between the reasonable assurance and the limited assurance given by the ICAI guidance, right? And in the meanwhile, we have seen in the last couple of years, SEBI has released certain FAQs on the BRSR core assurance, right? So let's understand what are those FAQs, and it is very important to comply with those FAQs released by the SEBI. Does the assurance provider need to be a chartered accountant? So SEBI has clarified on this particular aspect that the assurance provider, whether assurance provider is a chartered accountant or not to be a chartered accountant. So answer is very clear. Assurance provider can be a chartered accountant or cannot be a chartered accountant. The only thing is that person, the chartered accountant or any other person who is providing the assurance service, that person should be having a necessary expertise for providing the reasonable or the limited assurance, right? Because BRSR core is a professional agnostic. It is not necessary to be undertaken by the chartered accountant. The person should have the necessary expertise for providing the reasonable assurance or the limited assurance. Moving forward, another question raised by the SEBI: can the statutory auditor of a listed entity be appointed as an assurance provider for the BRSR code? That means the statutory auditor of the financial reporting of a listed entity, can that statutory auditor be appointed as a assurance provider for the BRSR code? So SEBI said yes, the statutory auditor of the listed entity can be appointed as the assurance provider for BRSR code. Another question raised by the SEBI: can the internal auditor of a listed entity or the group entity be appointed as the assurance provider? Right. So this question also applies in case of the statutory auditor. If I frame that question from the financial reporting aspect, can the internal auditor of an organization be a statutory auditor of that organization? Answer is no. Right. Similarly, SEBI mentioned very clearly, no, the internal auditor of the listed entity or the group entity cannot be appointed as the assurance provider for the BRSR code. Right. So internal auditor and the external auditor has to be different agency, different individual. What activities can be undertaken by the assurance provider for the BRSR core? What activities? right? So let me take a step back and understand what activities the statutory auditor can be provided to the company in the capacity of the statutory auditor. So statutory auditor cannot provide any management consultancy. Statutory auditor cannot provide any bookkeeping services. Statutory auditor can only provide the audit service, tax audit service, system audit service, right? But not any management, bookkeeping or management consultancy service. Similarly, the SEBI has also provided the similar guidance, and this says assurance provider can provide following service: third party certification, tax audit, system audit, tax filing from the perspective of the BRSR core of the listed entity or the group of entities. When we say group of entities, what do you mean by group of entities? Apply the same concept what we have read in Ind AS, Indian GAAP, IFRS. Group entity means holding company, subsidiary company, JV company, associate company. Right. So if company, if there is a chartered accountant, if there is a CF firm, which is the statutory auditor of any organization, then group includes the parent company, subsidiary company, associate company, JV of that chartered accountant firm cannot provide any other service or management service to that organization. So what all services are prohibited from the assurance provider perspective to that listed entity or the group of entities? Risk management service cannot be provided. Project management service cannot be provided. Management and the consultancy service cannot be provided. Investment advisory service cannot be provided. Investment banking service cannot be provided to the organization or the group of entities. Designing, implementation of the information system cannot be provided. Rendering of the outsource of the financial service cannot be provided. Actuarial service, bookkeeping service, accounting service, management consultancy service cannot be provided by the assurance provider or the auditor to the company or its group entities. That is what the guidance laid by SEBI on that. So moving further, another question: what activities or service by the assurance provider can lead to the conflict of interest, right? So this is the other side of the previous question. Where an assurance provider sells product, offer any non-audit or non-assurance service to a listed entity or the group of entity, then it results to a conflict of interest. So the auditor, the assurance provider has to be independent of that organization, including its group entities. Okay, moving further, what do you mean by the group? Group means the holding company, subsidiary company, associate company, joint venture company. What is holding company? The company who is holding more than 50%. If we look from the Ind AS or IFRS perspective, any company who is controlling the other entity is the holding company. When we look at the control means not only the percentage, but the decision making powers. The company who is having a decision making powers on the another entity, that company is considered to be a holding company. Then we have the subsidiaries, associates. Associates means significant influence. Joint venture, that means mutual or the unanimous consent. Then these are called the group of entities. So independent, the auditor or the assurance provider has to be independent in terms of the listed entity and as well as its group entities as well. Okay. Moving forward, which entity would be considered as associate of the assurance provider? Now we are talking in terms of the associate provider, assurance provider associate. So SEBI has provided a detailed guidance on this particular aspect. So SEBI has divided the response on this question into three parameters. One is where the assurance provider is a firm or a corporate entity, where the assurance provider is a chartered accountant firm, where the assurance provider is an individual. So then who will be considered as an associate or the network entities of the assurance provider? So first scenario, where the assurance provider is a firm or the corporate entity, then it says associates would include any of its partners, parent, subsidiary associates. Any entity in which the assurance provider, its parent or partner, has a significant influence or control, then it will be considered as associate. Where the assurance provider is a chartered accountant, then the network firm and the network entity of the chartered accountant firm will be considered as associate of the assurance provider. Where the assurance provider is an individual, then who will be the associate? Then associate will include its immediate relative. Now the definition of the immediate relative has not been defined by the SEBI, but the SEBI has given the reference that you should look for the Companies Act, right? And Companies Act section 2 subsection 77 defines who is a relative. It says the relative means Hindu undivided family, HUF, husband and wife, any person which is related to other in such a manner as may be prescribed. Now, as may be prescribed means we need to go to the rules and understand who are the relatives. So when we go to the rules, father, which includes stepfather, mother includes stepmother, son includes stepson, son's wife, daughter, daughter's husband, brothers, including stepbrother, sister, including stepsister. All these people are considered as relative, where the assurance provider is an individual. Right. So this is a comprehensive guidance provided by the SEBI on this aspect, that who is an associate of an assurance provider, where the assurance provider is a firm, where the assurance provider is a CA firm, where the assurance provider is an individual. Moving forward, the next concept is the assurance methodology. What methodology we need to adopt while performing the audit, while providing the assurance services to any from the perspective of BRSR code. Right. So as per the ICAI guidance, so this has been divided into three phases. One is phase one, planning, phase two, execution, and phase three, completion. Right. If you see, this is largely aligned what we do in our statutory audit of the financial reporting side. Okay, planning phase, what we need to do. In planning phase, we need to define the scope. This is very important, that from the perspective of the BRSR core, BRSR, that what type of assurance we need to give. For example, BRSR core, we have to give reasonable assurance, but from the perspective of the BRSR reporting, what kind of assurance is required, because assurance is not mandatory in that case, right? Company may go for limited assurance, company may go for the reasonable assurance, right? So the scope clarity should be there. Confidence in the level of available information or the evidence, right? So sufficient and available, sufficient and appropriate information or evidence should be required. So that level of information we should capture at the time of planning stage. Initial risk assessment, factors such as subjectivity, materiality, risk of fraud, error needs to be assessed. Bring in subject matter expert. As I said, GHG emission, environmental specialist, we need to evaluate, we need to plan if we need to involve subject matter expert while doing our planning phase. Understanding of the entity, location, industry, sector, peer benchmarking, how they are doing in the market, how they are performing, how they are disclosing in their BRSR report, that needs to be taken into consideration. Understand the entity's reporting purpose and intended user. Understand and assess whether the reporting topics are relevant to the intended users. Compliance with the independence requirement, materiality, quantitative materiality, right? So that needs to be taken into consideration on the planning phase. Risk of material misstatement, right? So we need to define what are the critical risks at the different assertion level, that needs to be assessed at the planning phase. The second phase is the execution, right? So in the execution, while doing the statutory audit, we perform the walkthroughs, we perform the test of details, we perform the substantive testing, we perform the control testing, right? We perform the trend analysis, we perform the analytical procedures. So that level of performance, that level of audit procedure, we need to plan here while doing the execution as well, right? For example, conduct walkthroughs, review procedures, perform the review of design and implementation of control, analyze the data flow and procedure for identifying, gathering the, reporting the relevant data. What are the key processes in place? Whether the company is maintaining the data in a manual basis, whether the company is evaluating to have the data in a system, right? What we have seen in the market, most of the companies are evaluating in terms of migrating their manual data into a ERP process, right? They are going to the automation process, and we have also seen in the market like SAP, Oracle, they have implemented a new module for the perspective for the perspective BRSR reporting as well. Whether the information produced by company is sufficiently reliable or not, perform the test on sample basis, substantive procedure, analytical procedure, perform interviews with the senior personnel, perform interviews with the sustainability officer of the company, evaluate the judgment made by the management. This entire thing forms a part of the execution exercise, right? Then we have the conclusion and the completion. We need to first of all reach to a conclusion whether the evidence produced by the management in terms of the data presented in the BRSR information, reporting, core, whether that is correct or not, whether we can form our opinion on the information produced by the management, right? We need to evaluate to obtain a letter of representation we need to use the latest format of the assurance report, right? If there is any changes which has been done as compared to the last year, we have to ensure that the report which we are using, the report which we are going to release, that has to be a latest template. Ensure the procedure and boundaries mentioned in the report, right? And perform the subsequent event procedures. So this is what the assurance methodology is, where we divide entire procedure, entire performance of the BRSR, reasonable assurance or limited assurance, in terms of planning phase, in terms of execution phase, in terms of conclusion phase, right? So BRSR assurance side is very, very critical. This is a new concept which has been evolved in the last 3 years, but the assurance side, 31st March 2024 was the first accounting period in which the assurance provider has provided their report, audit report, assurance report for the BRSR code, right? So it is, so the, as a chartered accountant, as an BRSR assurance provider, we should be vigilant. What are the key information? What are the key updates which is coming in the market, coming from SEBI, coming from the ICI, in order to ensure that the whatever evidence we are gaining, is there any improvement, the and providing, and the level of evidence which we are gathering, whether that is sufficient to form our view. So thank you. This is from my side.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing this information from an audit and assurance point of view. It was very helpful for me, and I'm sure it will be very beneficial for all the fellow chartered accountants who are like willing to expand their scope into sustainability reporting and audit in that domain, apart from like the basic statutory audits and internal audits that we perform on a day-to-day basis. So
Thank you, Priyamada.
there are two questions that I wanted to ask. So one of it would be like, is the assurance for BRSR disclosure, is it like a part of the financial audit that we already perform, or is it like a completely separate process, the
It's
assurance
a
aspect of it?
Yeah. So one is the financial audit, financial reporting audit. Second one is the BRSR reporting, right? So BRSR reporting is not a part of the financial reporting, right?
Okay.
But as a part of the annual report, that will go in as a part of the annual report, but not as a part of the financial reporting, right? Globally, if we look at global, IFRS S1 and S2 has been released, which
Okay.
asks, which provide certain guidance that these kind of information needs to be disclosed in the financial statement itself, right? So
Right.
as of now, we have not adopted S1, S2 in India. So this BRSR reporting is a part of the annual report, but not as a part of the financial statement.
All right, thank you so much. Another question is that when we audit our financial statements, we calculate, like we discussed in the slide as well, that we calculate materiality based on revenue or PBT or the total assets of the company. But when it comes to concept like ESG, like there's so much non-financial aspect of it. So how do we like determine what the crucial ESG matters are? What should be considered as material while reporting? Like how can we assess materiality? Because there's no set formula or standard in this situation.
Correct. So there is also a concept not in BRSR reporting, but there is a concept of the dual materiality, right? One is the
Right.
financial materiality, second one is the impact materiality. Financial materiality, how the particular, for example, how the environmental impact, how the environmental changes impact the financial statement of the company, how it impact the PP useful life, how it will impact the warranty, how it will impact the particular item, whether the company is supposed to create a provision for any losses or any expenses which the company is going to incur in futures. On that basis, we need to compute the financial materiality. And in
Hmm.
terms of impact materiality, we need to evaluate what is the broad agenda of the company, right? How the operations of the company impacts the other areas, whether the air, whether pollution, whether water, whether XYZ. Basis that we need to arrive at the materiality.
All right. And some questions that we had received from the viewers, one of it was like, what are the major challenges if we see that an auditor like witnesses while doing a VRSR audit, like the main points that
See,
usually a auditor
what
faces?
I've
Yeah.
seen that the people on the company side, they are not well educated. They have not devoted significant time in terms of the guidance released by ICI, the guidance released by the SEBI on these particular aspect, how the particular number is to be computed. For example, I give you a live scenario. So there is a company who has multiple location, right, in terms of extracting the data. Right.
Hmm.
So one location has given the data of water intensity, water consumption in milliliter. One location has given the data in terms of kiloliter. And at the
Right.
parent level, the company has just consolidated the numbers. right?
Right.
Even not looking at what's the unit the company is provided, what the location is provided. So there are the many challenges which we have seen in the market, right? They are just collating the information. So there is a big need for the awareness session, training sessions, and I think this is the only way where we can educate them.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. There's just one general question in the end. So, because technology is like so prevalent nowadays, emerging technology, and obviously it is applicable for top 1,000 listed companies in our country, but also other companies can report BRSR on a voluntary basis. So, not everybody, has that proper mechanism in place to like extract information for ESG reporting. So how can like technology or AI really help in this domain?
Okay, so I let me take a step back to answer this question.
Right.
Couple of years ago, maybe 5 years ago, in 2019, we have Index 116 or
Hmm.
IFRS 16,
Right.
right? So prior to that, we were doing the accounting of the lease rental in the P&L only. So
Hmm.
when that concept came up in 2019, right, where we were supposed to recognize the right of use asset and the lease liability in the books of accounts, then it
Right.
created a big problem for the all the companies who are having big leases, right? Then the uh, technology comes into the play. Most of the companies like SAP, Oracle, and the other ERP players, they have opened a new module, right?
Hmm.
That you just put the numbers in the that particular module, and they will compute the financial impact not only on year basis but on quarterly basis for the entire life cycle of the contract as well. For example, if the life cycle of the contract is 30 years, so those modules, those ERP are able to provide the data, not only the general entry but the disclosure in the financial statement, right? So this is a new
Right.
concept. This will take time, and we have seen in the market in the last couple of years, SAP, Oracle, they are coming up with the new modules, and the people are evaluating on which module, on which company they should migrate, right? But
Okay.
companies are evaluating.
All right. Thank you so much. Those were all the questions that I had, and I'm really glad that I was a part of this insightful session by both Sarika ma'am and Amit sir. Like all the concepts are very clear, and I'm sure it was very helpful for all the viewers as well. So I would, in the end, just like to thank both of you, and if you would like to just conclude by saying whatever you want to say.
So Sarika ma'am, you would like to go first?
You can, then I'll go later. No problem.
Sure. So Premada, I will only say that it's a new concept, right? So being a chartered accountant, understanding BRSR core would be a difficult task. As Sarika ma'am said that she started this journey of BRSR 3 years ago, right? And she was struggling prior to that. She was zero and couple of other things she mentioned, right? So same with me, right? I started just 6 months ago in terms of BRSR and all those stuff, right? So it is not a new thing, right? I would say the new concept which has come up, it is also a footprint of the chartered accountant where they can play a big role, right? It's
Right.
only a time which we need to spend to understand this aspect. And I would like to say big thank you to you and Anil ji to organize such session where we can present our views and the people can understand what are the key different nuances coming out of the BRSR.
Thank you.
So much, Amit ji. Thank you so much, Sarika
Thank you,
ji,
sir.
for such a wonderful deliberation. As you already said, ki this is a very new concept, but now it's almost. I hope Sarika ma'am has already covered. It's already 3 years now. So now it is very important, and in the days to come, it is again a very important concept. So you have shared knowledge with all our members, insights with all our members. So I have gained a lot through deliberation of both the learned speakers. So from the core of my heart and as well as on behalf of AASB of ICI, I extend my heartiest thanks towards both the learned speaker
Thank
for
you, sir.
such a
Thank you.
wonderful deliberation. Thank you so much, Amit ji. Thank you so much, Sarika ji. And I also thanks Priyamada ma'am for such wonderful moderation, as well as your starting of the webinar. You have introduced about the webinar. So thank you so much, Priyamada ji. And I
Thank you,
also thanks
sir.
all the participants of today's webinar. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Thank you.
so
everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you.
sir.
much.
Well,
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
thanks.
Thank you, man. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.